Good evening, everyone on YouTube and Facebook, and welcome to this seminar from the Open University. My name's Stephen Jones, and I'm going to be hosting the event, and the event is aimed at giving you a really good insight into what support's available at the Open University for students and how to access that information, which is really the hard bit sometimes. Some of you may already be on an Open University course. Some of you might actually be looking to start one now in October. And indeed, some of you out there might be just thinking of joining us on a qualification. So the evening really, as I said, is going to be hosted by a number of experts we've got. We've got an associate lecturer, Mary, who's going to talk to you about some aspects of when she would be contacted. We've also got Liz, who's an expert from the student support, and she'll be talking to you about more detailed support that you can actually get. So the way we're going to run the evening is that we'll start with some input from Mary and Liz, and then we'll have a little bit of a question and answer session, which is over to you. You can ask questions, you can type them in, and I will then feed them through to our team of experts. So let's crack on with the evening. It is live, so please accept any mistakes we make. We may stumble through a few words, but that's the nature of the beast when it's live. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to one of our associate lecturers, one of our very experienced associate lecturers, Mary, who will talk to you about when perhaps you should be looking to contact your tutor for support during your qualification. So over to you, Mary.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Stephen. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you this evening.
And over to you, Liz, to say hello.
Hi everyone, so brilliant to be here, really nice to see you all. My name's Liz, I work in student support. I'm aligned to the STEM student support team, but we do have ones in all different subjects, so lovely to be here. Hello.
Okay, one of the important things tonight is to maintain anonymity and confidentiality. This is streaming live, as we've already said, so it's very important that you don't give away any details about yourself, because they will be recorded for posterity. So don't give out where you live or your personal identifier or any details that might let people be able to identify you. And also, when you're asking questions, the questions really need to be generic. If there's something very personal, this isn't the forum to discuss them or to raise them. This forum will give you ideas of how to get that information and how to access people who will give you fantastic support. We're very lucky to have such brilliant tutors and support team within the Open University. Okay, so let's start off with a couple of talks. We're going to start off with Mary, who usually would be, as an associate lecturer, as your tutors, you're probably more aware of calling them, would probably be the first port of call for many aspects of support. So I'm now going to hand over to Mary, who will give you a little talk into student support from the tutor. Mary.
Thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to briefly share my screen so that you can see some notes that I prepared specifically for this evening. Right, so who do you contact? Do you go straight to the student support team or do you look for your tutor? Well, when should you contact your tutor? We are the luckiest people in the Open University because we get to talk to our students every single day. And that's the best part of being a tutor. So in a lot of cases, when you have a problem, your tutor is a great person to think about contacting. The number one issue that students have is that they need an extension to their TMA. And that's short for tutor marked assignment. If you study with the Open University, you know immediately what a TMA is. It may strike equal parts dread and fear in your hearts, but most of the time they're really rewarding to do. So when you need an extension, you need to go to your tutor. Now, you might need an extension for a variety of reasons. We know that Open University students are really some of the most talented people that I've ever come across. They're often multitasking across many different spheres: work, family, studying, all kinds of things. And when you're juggling that many balls, sometimes you need a little bit of flexibility and deadlines. So you may need an extension to a TMA, and it could be for family, work, medical, or any other kind of issue. The important thing to remember is that your tutor is here to support you. Okay, we want to see you succeed. That's why we work here. So try and please be honest with your reason about needing an extension, because there is nothing to fear from being frank, and that is the way that we can support you most effectively. We do need to know a reason for you needing an extension, and this is simply to enable us to get an idea of what are the obstacles that you're facing and what we can do to try and get you to overcome those obstacles. It's not because we're naturally nosy, honestly. So tutors can provide extensions of up to 3 weeks. And after that time, in consultation with an appropriate staff tutor, we may be able to give you a longer extension as well. But just remember that any decisions on extensions are taken with your best interests in mind, and our priority is helping you, supporting you to finish the module. The one area where we cannot give an extension is in your EMA. EMAs are effectively exams. And just like in a real exam, when you go in a hall and have to sit there for 3 hours writing out laborious essay answers or working out complicated statistic problems, you can't postpone an exam. So that's an area that actually a tutor can't help with, but actually nobody can help with that really, other than perhaps contacting student support and looking at a deferral. Okay, so that's your most common reason for needing an extension for contacting your tutor, but there are other reasons too. For example, you might be struggling to understand the module material. Maybe you didn't understand the TMA question. Maybe you're confused over one of the sections in the textbook. Maybe you're not sure how to tackle an ICMA question, or perhaps you don't understand the EMA question. Well, you know what? This is perfect for us to get involved in. You're not studying this module because you already know how to do it. You're studying it because it's new to you, and we're here to support you on that journey. So tutors can provide guidance and point you towards the correct material. They can help you work through very similar questions and models. Obviously, tutors won't give you the answer, but they will show you how to work out the answer for yourself, empowering you and enabling you to really get the most out of your learning. Another reason that you may need to contact your tutor for is because you can't complete a specific element of coursework. Now, this could be a task like an experiment or a group task, some kind of collaborative activity. And again, please be honest with your reason for not being able to complete or take part. Again, I have to reiterate, there is nothing to fear from being frank. You might have a reason, your reason might sound silly to you, but we have heard and dealt with the whole variety of reasons for not being able to take part in these kinds of tasks. For example, sometimes it's really difficult to work with a group of people that you don't know, and it can make you feel really anxious. Sometimes you have to carry out an experiment and you have to get all the bits together, and then something happens and you forget to do something at the right time, and suddenly the time has gone to do the experiment. You know, there could be all sorts of issues that arise. All we need to know is what's going on with you so that we can advise and support you in the best way possible. What can tutors actually do if you can't complete an element of the coursework? Well, we can often provide an alternative task. For example, if you haven't been able to complete an experiment, we might be able to provide you with data that you can work on to carry out the calculations that were intended with the experiment. Or perhaps if it's a collaborative activity, we'll be able to reassure you and say to you not to worry if you really don't feel like doing that. It's only worth, 5% of the entire coursework segment, so it really won't make much of a difference to your overall grade. the last thing that I'm going to cover this evening and in this presentation is, the different ways that you can contact your tutor. And there are different routes. Firstly, there is contact info on Student Home. There is a button that you can click which says contact my tutor. So that's really direct and straightforward. You can also contact us through the module forums. So each module has got its own student forums in which we encourage discussion, and they're always monitored. So there are ways to initiate discussions and ask questions in those. But every tutor sends out a welcome email to their flock of students. And in that email, there will be contact details for your tutor. And tutors love hearing from students. So please don't feel inhibited about saying hello back when we send out our welcome at the beginning of October. Okay, that's it from me. So I'll hand over to Liz.
Hi everyone. So I'm coming from a slightly different perspective. I'm speaking to you from the student support team. So just to say, I really liked that you just called a flock of students, Mary. I think that's really nice, and I think it really sort of sums up, the sort of experience, and that a lot of tutors are very sort of protective and supportive of their students, and we want to do the same in the student support team, but we are set up a little bit differently. So Mary's obviously been explaining how it works with when you have a tutor. So every time you do a new module with the Open University, you have a different tutor. So if you're new to your OU studies, you might have seen that you've got this overarching qualification on your record, and within that, each of those little sections of the module, there's little building blocks that you put together to get that big qualification at the end. They're all different. You'll have a different tutor, it'll be a different subject area, you'll get different course materials, all that sort of thing. In terms of the support that we offer from the student support team, that is sort of like a big all-encompassing sort of big hug that will wrap our arms around you for the whole of the qualification, whether you've got a different tutor or not. So that's one difference, is we are sort of there for the duration. We're always there for you to be able to contact us and sort of ask any questions that you might have. So I've been working in student support now for about 11 years, and I would totally agree with Mary that the best part of the job is being able to speak to students. I think, everyone that I work with probably feels the same. We're all sort of very people-focused people, and we really just want to sort of give you the best support that we can, and actually another really rewarding thing is sort of watching students succeed and watching that sort of distance traveled. So when might you contact us in the student support team? There can be all sorts of reasons for this. So it might be that something happens, whether that is you're not very well, or something happens in your personal life, something that basically impacts your studies and you're not really sure what the best route forward is. So Mary sort of touched upon deferral, which is something that we can look at, and what I would say is that a lot of students can sort of hear the word deferral and think, oh, it's slightly negative connotations. We shouldn't see it like that at all, because I think actually we see deferring as sort of, it's something you're coming back to. It's a little bit of a break. So we can sort of provide all your options around that. So that could be the financial implications if you're paying with a loan, or depending on how you've covered the cost of the module. But it's also sort of how that might impact the length that it's going to take you to complete your qualification. And that's obviously looking if that's the decision you make to defer. We're completely impartial, so we're never going to say to you, this is what you should do, and this, and tell you what to do. It's always going to be a case of, we'll generate options for you and talk them through with you. So deferral is one option. There's all sorts of different things that you can also do, to stay on the module. So it's possible to put in special circumstances and sort of let the module result panel know when it comes to kind of looking at your results, is there anything else going on that they need to know about that might have impacted your performance? There's options just to sort of postpone the exam or the EMA. And there's basically just lots of different options depending on your situation. All modules are different. That's another thing to say. So they will have slightly different assessment strategies. Again, something that we can talk talk through with you. We're not academics, and so in many ways your tutors, that if you've got a really specific question about the module, your tutor's probably a good person to speak to. We can sort of look at that assessment strategy and say, oh, actually you've got a lot on at work at the moment. Well, actually, the next TMA, so tutor marked assessment's only worth 5%, but the one after that's worth 20. So, maybe have a chat to your tutor. Is it possible to maybe skip one? Obviously, in an ideal world, all students complete all assignments, but we know that we don't live in an ideal world. And in that respect, as Mary said, we totally understand that OU students are quite different from sort of traditional campus-based students. You're all sort of spinning lots of different plates. There's lots of things going on, and obviously that has an impact on sort of what you've got to give to your studies. I think really key difference is most students take about 6 years to do a degree. Not obviously. Some students do it faster, some students do it slower, but I would say if a student is studying at a part-time rate, they're going to do it in 6 years. So it's obviously quite a long time to be studying a qualification, and the likelihood of something happening that's going to have some sort of impact on that, it's really common. So sometimes we have students get in touch right at the beginning of their study journey. Other times we might not hear from students until they're right at the very end, and something might pop up. So you can contact us in all sorts of different ways. First of all, you could call us. So we will always have staff manning sort of an inbound phone line. So you can call us and speak to one of our staff. You can web chat with us. You can email us. And another thing, if you would like to speak to us, but it's sort of not a convenient time now, or you send us an email and we think actually it would be really good to have a chat about this rather than sort of ping-ponging emails, we could make an appointment to give you a call back at a sort of convenient time. And that's something that we use quite a lot. So in terms of, things that you might contact the student support team about, we've obviously touched about if something, maybe goes a little bit sideways and you want to think about stepping away or you need some extra support. But actually, there's loads of other things that can sort of impact things as well. So we've talked about something coming up and it being a bit of a surprise. I always sort of use the sort of description of saying your degree is a bit like if you put a destination to Google Maps. You might hit traffic on the way and it might send you a different way that you weren't expecting. Or there could be a road closure and then you have to go off and take a diversion. Doesn't mean you're not going to get to where you're going, but obviously we can sort of be there to help guide with some of that stuff. So another thing that you might contact us about, we have a lot of students who study with us who've sort of declared disabilities or health conditions. And some of the things we've talked about that might impact deferral are sort of things that are unexpected and might just kind of sort of pop up. If you, for example, have some sort of chronic condition that does impact you on the day-to-day and you're just sort of worried how that might impact your study journey, how am I going to manage it, how am I going to fit the time in, you can definitely come to us to speak about that. We actually do have a separate disability support team, where you can sort of tell them all about the impact of any sort of health conditions or disabilities, and they can sort of discuss with you things like reasonable adjustments, funding that you might be able to apply for, and all that sort of thing. Do we have like specialist equipment, that you could apply for through disabled students allowance, or all those sorts of things. But what I would say about the disability support team is they tend to sort of be there with getting everything set up for you ready to go. If you're actually on the module, if you're actually midway through it, it's probably a really good thing to contact us, because we can then speak to the disability support team, and actually a lot of the time we speak to tutors too. So it's a bit of a trick question really, who do you contact, the student support team or your tutor? Because in some cases it can sort of be either or. One way that we take contact, which I didn't mention before, is it's not uncommon for tutors to be able to refer things into us. So if you have a chat to your tutor because you're struggling with something in your personal life or something's going on, if you're obviously happy to share that, there is actually a mechanism for the tutors to contact us to sort of put a shout out and say, I've spoken to this student. It would be really helpful if you could give them a ring, just because they've got a lot going on, or it might not even be that detailed, and then we'd sort of reach out. But by the same token, If, for example, you can't get hold of your tutor, which doesn't happen very often, but obviously, a lot of our tutors do sort of hold positions at other institutions, or they might have specific office hours, or sometimes, God forbid, they do go on holiday as well, like all of us. In those situations, if you can't get hold of your tutor, you could come to us and we might be able to contact either someone who's standing in for them, or sometimes I think it can be a bit intimidating contacting your tutor, which, I mean, I can totally understand it. Obviously, if you've got a lovely tutor like Mary, it seems like, oh, why would I not go to Mary? But it is scary because it's the person who's marking your work at the end of the day, and it can be quite a big step to sort of reach out and say that you're struggling. So it's not uncommon for students to sort of come to us first, say, oh, I'm just a bit embarrassed about contacting my tutor. Could what do you think I should do about it? And actually, many times I've been in touch with tutors just to pop them a quick email, say, I've just spoken to this student, they're just feeling a little bit anxious about things. They're really keen to ask for an extension, but they're just feeling a bit embarrassed about it. What do you think? Maybe you could reach out to them and have a chat, and we can sort of be that, I guess, if you think about like one of those Venn diagrams where it's all the circles overlapping each other, we sometimes in the student support team are kind of in the middle of that, in the sense that we can sort of reach out on your behalf if we need to. So yeah, I think the other thing to say is we do have sort of different levels of support that you can get in the student support team. So we sort of have, if you've ever called in to sort out something with your registration, or sort of with general inquiries, you've probably spoken to someone on our student recruitment team, which is sort of our biggest and frontline team. But when things get a little bit more specific, at that point, that's where things might come through to the student support team. And we have sort of a team of what we call senior advisors, and they provide advice, so they can sort of talk to you about your study journey. It's not uncommon for students to maybe start a qualification that's quite broad and then think, actually, and I'll give an example for science, just because I work in STEM, so it's an example that comes up a lot. On our sort of first science module, it's quite broad, it's got a bit of everything in it, and some students come in and think, I really want to do biology is going to be for me, that's exactly what I want to do. And then they do a bit of chemistry and think, actually, I'm rethinking this now, there's other areas that I might want to look at. And so that's the sort of thing that we can talk through with you. We, after the senior advisor team, we have actually got a smaller team of educational advisors who they provide guidance, which is sort of like advice, but it can be a little bit more reflective. So you might get referred to an educational advisor if you're struggling to make up your mind about something, if you're dealing with something that's quite emotionally sensitive, or there's other things going on where it's quite a complex thing that sort of just needs some real unpicking. Because as you can imagine, a lot of our curriculums have all sorts of different twists and turns that you can take. Modules get replaced, and with a lot of our students being with us for, like, I think it's up to 16 years, you can complete a degree, things change. The setup of qualifications change, and sometimes it can be really helpful for an educational advisor to sort of get involved and unpick some of those more complex things. So yeah, I think that's probably the overview of everything in student support, really. I'm just wondering if we've got any questions from all of you lot watching, or if there's anything, Stephen, that you wanted to sort of come back to.
Yeah, well, thanks for both of those really insightful contributions to the evening. I think, it is a very, very important aspect of your course's student support, but it can be looked upon as a rather negative thing that you're asking for support. But in fact, it's the best students we have will always ask the right question of the right people at the right time that will allow them to get on to the next module, to finish a module and progress with their qualification. So really, I personally feel it's a strength to ask for support, and it's not a negative. My role really in the university is that I'm one of the academics, so I'm responsible for writing some of the resources that students study for the teaching and learning of that. But I think more important to me, actually, over the last 3 or 4 years, half of my role, in fact, has been acting as the liaison between student support, tutors, and the School of Engineering and Innovation. And what I really see is the impact on people's qualifications that people like Mary and Liz have. They will turn heaven and earth really to get people through the qualification. I often get queries that are so technical, I'll have to go and get ask advice from senior people and get that back to them just so we can get the students through. So it is a wonderful resource, and it's really, really worth taking up on the support if you need it. Some people may go through the qualification and never ask for it from student support. Very few students wouldn't form a relationship with your tutors, and that is one thing I would highly recommend. Okay, so as Liz said, we're starting to get some questions in now from yourselves, and which is lovely. It's great to get feedback from you. Just to reiterate what I said about anonymity, that's quite a challenging word. Anonymity and confidentiality. Please don't identify yourselves and don't ask anything that's too personal, please. But got a question here. I think I'll throw this one over to Mary. This might be from a current student, but the question is, how many extensions can you get for one TMA?
So there isn't really a limit on the number of extensions that you can get. What we try and do is we try and look at the student and their circumstances and talk with them and agree together a reasonable extension in which the student feels confident that they will be able to finish their work. This isn't a top-down process and you're not back at school. We are all adults. We know you have complex lives, which you're spinning lots of different plates, as Liz put it so eloquently. So we want to support you with that. So if you tell us, look, I've got this massive job at work for the next 2 weeks, I just can't make this deadline. Could you perhaps give me 4 weeks so that I can do it properly? I would then return to my staff tutor and I would say, oh, I know it's going over the 3 weeks, but let's do this because I feel this is in the best interests of the student. And that is what we would agree together. So obviously, if you say to me, oh, could I have an extension of 2 days? And I'll say, yes, that's fine. And then you ask me again, oh, could I have another extension for another 2 days? I would prefer to have a conversation with you and say to you, okay, is that realistic? Let's talk about what else is going on. Let's take the pressure off. Nothing's on fire and we don't have to run out the house, you know, burning. Okay, let's sit down. Let's think about this. When are you really going to have time and space and the tranquility to approach this task? And so it's all about the conversation. It's not a limit, and it's not about setting unrealistic deadlines.
Is it okay if I jump in really quickly as well, Stephen? Sorry.
Very welcome.
Just from a student support point of view as well, I would say, you know, normally your extension request will go through your tutors. And I think advice that we quite often get is, while we obviously want, you know, the best for you and extensions can be a really useful tool, we do recommend don't get too reliant on them, because there's I suppose one thing to say is, while you can sort of have extensions on each individual TMA, you can't push the end of the course back necessarily. So what you don't want to do is go, I'll have an extension of 3 weeks, I'll have an extension of 3 weeks. And then before you know it, you're like, oh no, I've got like, you know, I've got 1 week to do my EMA, or I haven't got everything done in time. So I think while they are really useful, and I think most tutors are more than happy to sort of provide them, don't use them as just sort of as a bit of a crutch. I think it's really important, you know, to make sure you're planning your time. And sometimes there is that element of, again, being a bit clever with the assessment strategy and thinking, is it better to get an extension on this TMA when it's actually not worth as much, or shall I put my all into the next one? But again, that's definitely something to speak about to your tutor, because they know the module like the back of their hand, and they will be able to sort of guide you through that.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Liz. I think one of the issues with TMAs is perhaps people coming in to do them just want to get 100%, and that just doesn't happen at universities. You know, you have to be realistic, and sometimes if you've got enough you feel to pass, that might be the point to submit your TMA and try then to catch up and do better on the next TMA or EMA. So that was brilliant. I've been in the OU about perhaps 10 years now, and one of the things I'm just super proud of is that we are an open university. You don't need qualifications to join. You don't need anything to join. And we are really a sensational university for people who struggle to get around, may have learning disabilities, may have physical disabilities, and you can still play a full and active part in the qualifications. So the next question really pertains to that, which I think I'll just ask Liz to respond to initially. And the question is, who do I contact if I need additional accommodations for my module because of my learning disability?
Okay, so I sort of touched on this a bit before, but I think this is a really good example because I think one thing that's really interesting about sort of specific learning difficulties is that actually a lot of people might have one and not know that they've got one until they come back to picking something up. So I think a really common thing that we hear, especially if a student it's been a while that they've been out of education, they might think, oh, I think I'm dyslexic, or I think I might be dyspraxic, but it never really came up when I was at school. I had a really tricky time at school because of it. And actually, now I think about it, I do actually show quite a few sort of traits of dyslexia. Is it something that I can get tested for? So obviously, the question that you've asked is someone who maybe already identifies as a sort of being aware that they have a specific learning difficulty. But there is also sort of funding for assessments if you think you might be dyslexic. So that's sort of the first step, is even if you haven't got a full diagnosis, that might be something that we can help you with. So I think student support team is a really good place to contact us because we know all about the different funding options, and we can sort of talk things through with you. If you know that you're dyslexic or similar, and you've sort of got a post-16 diagnosis, I think it's really, really important to let the disability support team know. So that is the separate team that I sort of touched on before. And one of their sort of main jobs is that they write up what we call profiles for students. So we're not profiling you. It's not something that's being done to you. It's very much something that you engage with, and you sort of tell us the impact of your, specific learning difficulty on what your studies might be, so we can know a little bit more about it. These profiles are then written up. Your tutors can see them, which is great, because obviously when you're starting a module, they've already got that sort of cheat sheet, as it were, of what works for you and maybe what doesn't. So if you sort of need special arrangements or adjustments or even equipment, there's loads of different things that we can do. So you can apply for Disabled Students Allowance, or DSA, and that's something through Student Finance England. They can sort of help you with, I've seen all sorts of things. So software, maybe if it's particular software that you need and your laptop just isn't quite up to the job, they might be able to give you one with more processing power. Things like overlays for the screen if you read better with a different color, that sort of thing. So all the equipment stuff is generally through Disabled Students Allowance, or DSA. But actually, there's loads of things that we can do from an OU point of view. So we are mostly an online university, in the sense that I think there's definitely been a shift for a lot of module materials going to online only. And that is great for so many reasons, because they're a lot more portable. They're the sort of thing that you can access when you're out and about. You can look at them on your smartphone or your Kindle or your iPad, all of those sort of things. There's also, it's so much better in a lot of ways to be able to have like video content and audio visual stuff sort of like, buried away in your course materials. It makes it a lot more interactive. However, if you, for example, do have a specific learning difficulty and you learn better and you take in the information better, you like to highlight, you like to have those physical sort of papers in your hand, we can potentially look at setting that up for you so that you get printed versions of the online materials. Now that obviously they won't be sort of fully furnished textbooks that are sort of put together. They will generally be sort of loose leaf, and obviously if there are little videos, little audio snippets or interactive things, you sort of might have to hop a bit between the online materials and the printed, but it is something that we can look at getting for you. So you would need sort of evidence of having a post-16 assessment, or like I said before, we could help you get one of those, and then we can sort of set that up for you. The other thing to say about this is you are probably aware, if you've had a dyslexia assessment already, they quite often will make a recommendation about how much time you might need in things like exams. So just to make you aware, you can, we call them, we have a team called Radar, which sounds really technical and cool, but I think it's an acronym for additional requirements. I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically we send out a form. If you've told us about a health condition and you've sort of had one of these profiles written up, you've sort of declared a health condition to us, whatever that is, you will get a form out to you by email months and months before any exams that you've got, that basically says what reasonable adjustments will you need for the exam. So obviously we've mentioned specific learning difficulties. That does tend to be extra time, but it can be, it can be that you have printed versions of the question papers, that sort of thing. But obviously there's other things as well. All sorts of different adjustments we can make. A lot of them do tend to be sort of extra time based, or like split exams, that sort of thing. It's all changed a bit because obviously in the last few years we've gone a lot more to sort of online exams, whereas previously it was sort of like, oh, it could be a room next to the main exam hall, or we could send an invigilator around to your house. But actually post-pandemic, things have changed quite a lot, so we sort of have that more as standard, really, that students will take their exams from home. So yeah, loads of options. I think always like a really good first port of call is going to be getting in touch with the student support team, and any links that we need to make with other teams, we can do that and sort of set you right.
Thanks,
and
Liz.
just to come in,
of course you can.
From the tutor's point of view, letting us know and having a conversation about your needs is fantastic. Firstly, we get to meet you and chat with you and get to know you, which is what we really like doing. It's the best bit of our job. And secondly, it means that we'll be able to hear from you what helps. So we can change the colour on our slides when we're giving presentations, or the colour of the writing, perhaps. Perhaps we can give you extra support, one-to-one extra support, if that is the requirement from your condition. And there are really a variety of things. I've also had, physical disability students. So I've supported a student who was partially sighted, and we had to make adjustments to the kinds of questions that they were asked in the assignments. And that was because some of it was drawing based, which is obviously not fair to somebody who has a visual impairment. So, there are all sorts of things. Remember, our priority is your success. That really is what it's about.
Thank you very much, both. We've talked quite a lot about TMAs, or tutor marked assignments, but a question's popped up that says, I start a course and I do a few weeks and I send in a TMA and I get a mark. And the question is that all the feedback that I get on the TMA? So perhaps that's one for Mary to answer, please. Do they get any more information than just a mark?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I would say that 80% of my job is spent looking at your work and providing you with detailed feedback in writing. So not just a mark. We have script comments. So open your assignment and look for the comments. But also we make comments on a form that comes on top of the assignment, the returned assignment. Now, we spend a long time on these. We tell you what you've done really well. We tell you perhaps the areas that need a little bit further development, and we tell you where you can go to find the resources that you need to develop your skills in the areas where perhaps you're not as strong as in others. We do have some students who actually don't open their feedback. And this is obviously frustrating because we spent a lot of time giving you that feedback. And it's also not great for you because then you don't get our individual personalized feedback on what you, not anybody else, but you need to do to improve your score or what you've done well. So I would urge everybody, let's talk, open our feedback, let us know what you think. Really happy to discuss it after you've had feedback, if perhaps you haven't understood something or you're feeling a little bit hard done by. We're really happy to have those conversations.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Mary. A question perhaps for you, Liz, here. Someone's asked that they might need an academic reference, and who should they ask to obtain an academic reference?
Okay, so this sort of touches on something that I'd meant to mention earlier, actually, and that is the wonders of the Help Centre on your student homepage. So if you are new, or even if you aren't new and you just don't, you haven't really looked around really, on your student homepage, you will have all of your modules, and each of them obviously has a separate module website, loads of information on the top. All down the side, and all different things about your qualification. But there's also a help centre, which is a really good sort of one-stop shop for all sorts of different services. So there you can sort of find out more information about speaking to our careers service. You can find out more information about some of the sort of policies and process that I discussed before. So things like, postponing things, or those sorts of things. Now that the help centre is great, I wouldn't necessarily say that it is gives you exactly the same as you would as if you called and spoke to us, because obviously it's sort of that frequently asked questions thing, where it's got loads of information on there, but if you've got quite a unique situation, it's good to just talk it through someone. But basically on there is actually a tool where you can request an academic reference. So basically, and usually it's, if a student's going to study somewhere else, or if they are even for jobs, it can be a non-academic reference too. You can request a reference through the help centre, and obviously that does generally come from sort of our frontline service. We have a special team that sort of puts references together and gets them out. If you need something a bit more personal in there, so say you have a tutor that you got on really well with on a module, that you put a lot into, you had a really good relationship with the tutor, and you just think, actually, I think they're going to have my back here. I think, there's they're going to give me some good feedback. You can actually ask for that, and then basically, instead of going directly to your previous tutor, the person who will be putting the reference together can sort of do all that for you, so they can approach your tutor for comments, and then sort of build that all in together.
That's fantastic. Anything you'd like to add there, Mary? Or is that, I think Liz has covered it pretty well.
It's really comprehensive. And I also just want to say that tutors are delighted to speak well of their former students.
Okay, here's a really interesting question, because we're an online institution, the Open University, but we don't do things like experiments and laboratory activities. But so the question is, will we perform experiments, and will we need to buy anything to perform those experiments? So over to you, Mary.
Well, the answer is yes, we definitely do experiments. We are a proper university. We're just a really innovative one. And you have to get used to doing things in rather non-traditional ways, which I think just opens doors, really. So you do have to do experiments. And obviously, I don't know the full range of experiments across all the modules, and maybe Liz probably might have a better overview of that. But I know that the experiments that, for example, run in modules that I teach require very, very simple household materials. You wouldn't have to buy anything at all, or if you did spend anything, it would be under £5. So it's all about, when you're doing the experiment, it's all about preparation. So do go along to the tutorial that your tutor will be holding, telling you exactly what you need to do. There will be copious materials, setting out a list of the materials that you do need, explaining where you can find any of those materials. And I do know that for some modules, probably more advanced ones, there might be days in which you are invited to go to the campus in Milton Keynes and take part in experiments that require, expensive professional equipment. But I think Liz might be able to tell us more about that aspect.
Yeah, so there are face-to-face opportunities to do sort of lab schools. I don't know how common they are post-pandemic, but they are generally optional. So you can sort of choose to sign up to them. So we used to do a lot in terms of sort of field schools and stuff for some of the modules that were more hands-on. So like earth sciences and that sort of thing used to have a lot in sort of field schools. And I think now, I'm not sure don't quote me on this, but I don't know whether they are all fully that it used to be a case is that you had to do them to sort of meet certain learning outcomes, and I think now if they do offer them, they do tend to be that there's a virtual learning experience you can do instead. The other thing is that I know that there's definitely some physics modules, for example, that let you basically mess about with a massive telescope from afar, which is really cool. So basically you have like your own little slot when you can sort of remotely control this huge telescope. I think it's in Portugal, and you can do it all remotely. So there's sort of things that you can do that way. We have sort of like OU labs where you can do things online. So there's some sort of like microscope things set up, so you can sort of like get the experience as if you were doing it and still do the same stuff, but it's all sort of online. You can do it from home. I guess the other thing is to say, depending on what you're studying, some of the modules are sort of have maybe if you're doing like a mixed qualification, you might have some more sort of social sciences or languages modules that you're mixing in. They're not necessarily experiments and stuff, but there is the opportunity to sort of practice some of those things and maybe put together studies and that sort of thing. So yeah, lots of opportunities to do all sorts of different things.
I can just jump in a little bit on this question because I think as Liz said, we are a pioneering university, and one of the biggest advances we've made recently within the STEM area is the open STEM labs. And as Liz hinted at there, this is a vast array of experiments that students can just log on 24 hours a day at any time. You book a slot, you can log on, you can control a telescope, you can control pendulums in real time. You can actually move the pendulum faster and slower. You can do flame tests. There are hundreds of experiments. And what's really nice about this is most of the modules now being produced, or for the last few years, actually, because I wrote a module a little while ago and we did incorporate it. You have to do these experiments as part of the module. So you are expected to log on, you're expected to do an experiment and write a laboratory report. And it's a really, really valuable part of the module. Also, I mean, from my school, which is engineering and innovation, we have two modules. One, in fact, in the first level one. So in probably in your second year of study, you will do a course where we actually send you out a box full of experimental equipment. It's almost like going back 30 years to when they used to do it on television and build it up in Blue Peter. But I love it every year. I take part in that activity. I support the students. And I love it when this box turns up at my front door from whichever delivery company. You open it up and you just have to build the equipment. You may have to build towers. You may have to build motors. You may have to design sensors. And we have 8 weeks in which you do your experiment. And you're led through that by tutors, and it's a really, really exciting part of the module. And you do that right the way through your qualifications. So if you come onto many of the courses in STEM, many of the qualifications in STEM, you will be doing experimental work for sure. Okay, I think we don't seem to have any more questions. So just to round off everything, I'll just go back to Liz if she's got any concluding remarks she'd like to make.
All I really wanted to say was, I know we've kind of said, oh, contact your student support team. And I think, Stephen made a really interesting point before, which was sort of like, it's not a point of failure. If anything, it's more likely to sort of bring you to success. And I think sometimes the hardest thing, it's a really brave thing to sort of ask for help. And it is very much our bread and butter. So don't think, the person who's going to pick up the phone, or, even if you'd rather send an email in, they deal with these things all the time. But that's obviously not to invalidate, a really difficult situation you've got going on. Just to say, they're very experienced. They're always going to be empathetic to your needs. And actually, you're never going to get everything that you need, like we said, from the FAQs. As helpful as they are, the best thing that you can do is contact us and go, here's my bespoke situation. What can you provide for me? And we'll always do our best to help. We'll we're open. So in terms of our phone lines, we're open 8 till 6 during the week. We're not open weekends, but obviously you can email us. We can make appointments. We can call you back. So don't hesitate to reach out if you are struggling, because there's absolutely no shame in that, and it is literally what we're here for.
Fantastic. Just before I go to you, Marie, for wrapping up, we've just had one more question that's come through hot off the press, and it's actually something we haven't mentioned so far, so that's really good. It's very strange doing these seminars because we don't really know if we're talking to anyone or not. So it's lovely to get these questions coming through and make us realize our students are out there, or potential students. So the question is, and I'll open it to whoever feels like answering this, is should I contact careers right away, or should I do some research first? I've got some ideas about careers, but not a lot of information. So would anyone like to pick that one up?
I don't mind jumping in unless you want to, Mary.
Oh, well, very quickly, I would say that many departments hold careers events. So look out for those being advertised. But I would also say, yes, contact your careers advisor. If you've got some ideas, but you're not really sure where to start, then that is the place to start. And that's what they want to do. They want to hear from you and they want to help you. And they are specifically set up to do that. So definitely 100% contact your careers advisor. That's what I would say. Liz, you might have a different idea.
Thanks, Mary. Liz?
I would tend to agree with you. I think the thing is with careers advice is it's the same as sort of normal advice. It's if you have absolutely no idea, they're not going to tell you what to do with your, career, what you should do as a job. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a misconception if you say, oh, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So you go to the careers advisor. They do need something to work with. So they can, and the way that it is set up here is we do have sort of, I guess, faculty specific to a certain or area specific careers advisor. So we've got a STEM specific careers team who sort of know about STEM stuff. There is also the ability to sort of self-serve with careers. So you can choose whether you want to have like a shorter conversation with, so similar to the setup of the student support team. If you want sort of a slightly less in-depth sort of conversation that might take like 20-25 minutes, you'll probably speak to one of their senior advisors. But again, they've got educational advisors, so if you think actually I really need like a 45-minute chat, you can sort of go in and book an appointment for that. But there's loads and loads of other stuff on there as well on the careers website. They also quite often have sort of opportunities for placements, or sometimes employers will come to us to advertise our jobs to our students. So it's definitely worth checking out. And the thing is, you can actually have careers advice any point up until 3 years after you graduate. So there's nothing wrong with having a chat and then coming back in a few years and having another chat. They'll still be there, and things change. So yeah, I would say a good initial chat, but don't, it's a bit of a to be continued.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Mary. Suddenly the threat of closure has suddenly sparked a bit of interest in our questions. So another one's come through here, which I may have a little dabble first at answering and then see if I miss anything out. And the question is, how likely are we to be accepted by a PhD program after graduating from a bachelor's at the OU, and if not PhD, a master's program? So to answer the second bit first, we do run master's courses at the Open University. We run the integrated masters, which is slightly different to the bachelor's degree, but we also run postgraduate master's qualifications, and you apply to those just like you would in any other university. You fill in an application form and apply. And really, that's the same for a PhD. Each school will have a certain number of grants that they can offer to students, and our students are equally likely to get those as any other student. But what I should say is that our PhDs are not exclusive to our own students. Anyone can apply for a PhD student. So you are competing. So it is competitive. But if you do well in the qualification, that's going to stand you in good stead. Mary, Liz, have I missed anything out on those two?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I would say that I have been asked numerous times for references for masters, and fewer times, but still considerable number of times for references for PhDs. And I'm always delighted to hear that people are going on. It is a competitive environment,
Sure.
but the Open University prepares you very, very well.
What I would say very quickly as well is that you might be on one of our more flexible qualifications like an open degree or a BSc combined STEM. And I think sometimes we have students come to us and they're a bit worried and they say, oh, you know, is my degree not as good as a named degree? Is it going to impact my progress onto a master's or a job or whatever? And we always say it's the only problem is that quite a lot of sort of employers or maybe other institutions, it's not that they will turn their nose up at one of our more flexible qualifications. They might just not know what it is. So you just sort of have to be crystal clear, and it can be a really good opportunity to sort of explain what qualification you've been on, what you've studied in, what you specialize. So you might just have to put in a bit of extra legwork in terms of sort of explaining what it is that you've studied. But I'm sure, you know, depending on what you're looking to do, they may just then look at it and go, oh, so basically it's a named degree with a slightly different specialism in whatever. So yeah, I think just make sure you explain to them what it is, and I don't think you'll have any problems.
Nope, that's really good advice there. Okay, so just obviously, Liz, I was a bit quick in asking you for final comments, but thank you for those. So I'll just pop over to Mary and ask her if she's got any closing comments she'd like to give.
So my closing comments are really just about remembering that once you join the Open University, you belong. We belong. Okay, and we are here to support you, and that's what we want to do. We provide specialized, individualized, and compassionate support to you. We want to see you succeed. That's why we work here. So please talk to us. We want to hear from you.
Thanks, Mary. And really closing remarks from myself. I've just been reflecting on what Mary and Liz have said all evening. And one thing that I think strikes me as coming across really strongly is don't think about things too long. If you think you need support, ask for it. If you think you might need a little bit of help from your tutor, ask for it. Don't wait, because the longer you wait, the harder it can often be to actually make the move and get that support. Because one thing you won't get at the OU is anyone turning you away from support. They'll always offer the very best they can do. So just to say thanks to everyone for watching us tonight. Thanks to Marie, our associate lecturer and tutor. Thanks to Liz, our student support tutor. And I'd like to say thanks to everyone and thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.